Let me first of all just welcome you all to the State House today, and I hope you find your day informative and constructive and helpful. And I got to tell you, as I look over there, there's a lot of members of the legislature who are over there, which speaks to the importance of your organization in their eyes, which is critically important to all of us. I do want to congratulate Senator Lesser, the Attorney General Maura Healey, Representative Jeff Sanchez, who I spend a lot of time with, and of course, where the hell did he go? Hi, Lon Povich. Adam, you sort of touched on a number of the issues I was going to speak to, and I'm not going to repeat all of them. I'm just going to say this. I took that trip to Israel for a number of reasons, but a big part of it was about making a statement about a democracy in a very tough part of the world. And the second was about the chance to pursue a series of initiatives around innovation and economic development and cybersecurity and safety generally, which I believe Israel is way ahead of the rest of the world on. But one of the things I had a chance to do when I was there was visit the Western Wall. And I have to tell you that I read a lot of books. I'm a little bit of a nerd in that respect, and I've read a lot of books about the history of Israel and about the wall. But as is often the case, until you actually stand there and have a chance to put your hands on it and to get a sense of how it breathes and the power of what it represents, I don't think you can truly appreciate it. And I was there on a cold night, and that wall was warm. And the block that I actually put my hands on, which was in the middle of the wall, so at some point, literally thousands of years ago, somebody put this block, which I was told by the sign nearby weighed 14 tons, into this spot. No mortar, perfect fit. And I brought a little note with me because I was told to, because this is the fastest path to get a question answered you're ever going to find. And it was about a friend of mine who has a sick child. And I popped it into that wall. And in that moment, it really meant something to me. And I think for me anyway, while this trip was about democracy and innovation and partnership and all the rest, in that particular moment, it was about faith and freedom and the opportunity to practice what for many people in many respects is the most important piece of which they identify themselves. And for the first time, I really understood why having access to that wall was so important to the Jewish community and to Israel. Now, we found this nation once upon a time. It's only about this much time compared to the amount of time Jerusalem's been around, but it's ours. Because a bunch of people got into a bunch of very small boats and sailed across a very big ocean to chase an opportunity to practice their religion freely and out of harm's way and persecution. That's who we are, and it's what we're supposed to be about. And when we put that hate crimes task force back together, we did so at that time because we had a series of conversations with folks like JCRC who expressed concern about some of the rumbles out there. This is before all the data came out that showed that, in fact, This is a community that in many respects is under attack. For the very reason for which this country was originally founded and created, which is the possibility and the opportunity associated with faith. I'll tell you point blank, I know I speak for every legislator who's here, every public official who's here. We will do whatever we can to ensure that we protect that freedom for all of you and that we protect your ability to be who you want to be. Because that's supposed to be what we're all about in our most fundamental way. Now, with respect to Lon Povich, let me just say this. I've known him for a very long time, and I think everybody would agree. He's an incredibly smart guy. He married up, just like the rest of us. And he's had a terrific career as an attorney in both the public and private sector. But what makes Lon special is not that he's smart, though he is. A lot of people are. He's thoughtful. He's one of those people who rolls an issue around in his head a lot, and he collects a ton of data and points of view and observations from a lot of different people, and he's a really good listener. I bet if you actually tracked Lon over the course of a week, you'd discover that he spends about 2/3 of his time, maybe even 3/4 of his time listening, and about 25 to 35% of his time talking.
Here and supporting this wonderful, wonderful organization, and it is truly humbling to receive this award. Mike mentioned that there has been a rise in anti-Semitic incidents over the last couple of years. So important that these be documented, so important that these stories be told, and so important that those of us in public office, and particularly in a position of law enforcement with the responsibility of protecting public safety, take action. We were not spared in Massachusetts, as evidenced by the attack on the Holocaust Memorial and threats made to various JCCs. And of course, we saw those neo-Nazis and white supremacists come to town after they marched in Charlottesville. But we saw something else too. And to me, while we live in a time of significant consternation and despair about much of what we're seeing, I am ever heartened and inspired by the response, particularly by the response of people across Massachusetts, because as that was announced, that there was going to be a march here, remember, we gathered, many of us were together that night at Temple Israel, and the next day we spoke with one voice as we stood down on MLK Boulevard and marched to the Boston Common to say, not here, not in Massachusetts. And that is something that we are to be proud of. It is also, I think, our obligation, though, here in Massachusetts, to do and to stand up for what is right and to not be afraid. And that's why I think about JCRC in this time right now. For generations, you have served as a guiding light. You have been there to help lead the way, no matter what is happening in Washington, D.C., or anywhere else around the world. I'm not surprised. It's something that I saw and I learned as I had the experience, as I took office as Attorney General, of making my first trip to Israel. I was just speaking with Representative Kafka and his wife, who have 2 sons and 10 grandchildren right now living in Israel. That's pretty amazing and pretty wonderful. I was able to spend time with some of my colleagues there a few years ago, and I was so taken by all that I experienced during the course of that journey, and I look forward to returning. But one thing that we were taught when I was there is the Hebrew word for leadership. Now, I've done enough of these to know I'm not going to try Hebrew on any of this audience. But I will say that what I was struck by is that the Hebrew word for leadership has the same root as verbs like driving and mobilizing. Driving and mobilizing. And so that's what I think about when I think about leadership. That's what I think about when I think about JCRC, the force that you have been for so long on so many important issues, whether it was supporting young people to promoting community service, advancing social justice, combating discrimination, and yes, working to reduce violence in all its forms, and yes, working to protect our immigrant communities. Yesterday I spoke at the St. Patrick's Day breakfast, and I told the story of my great-grandmother who arrived here at the age of 16 from Ireland, looking for opportunity and looking for a better world, having lost her mother in childbirth to a younger sibling, and she wanted to get out of the house to lighten the load for her dad and her sisters and brothers. And that immigrant experience is personal to me as it is to so many of us, and I really applaud and appreciate all that you have done this year to stand up for those who are vulnerable always, those who are voiceless often, and certainly vulnerable, certainly our immigrant communities. So a lot of that, fortunately, ties with the work of the People's Law Firm, so we look forward to continuing to work with you on so many fronts. Now is the time to take the next step on reducing gun violence. I was in DC a couple of weeks ago. I had an opportunity to meet with some of the Parkland students in a private meeting. It was incredibly inspiring. I think this is a moment right now, and it coincides with the work that Angus McQuilkin and so many in this room have advocated for so long. There is a reason that Massachusetts has the lowest rate of gun deaths in the country. We have strong laws on the books, and we enforce them. I want to pass the strong extreme risk protective order bill. I think it is only a matter of common sense and taking steps to protect people who are harmed to themselves or others. So I really appreciate all that you're doing there. And let's draw upon the words and the common sense and the inspiration and the resolve of these young people from Parkland, Florida, who right now are here in Massachusetts. We'll be seeing some of them tomorrow as they speak over at Harvard University. Thank you for the critical work that you do. Keep fighting for justice in all of its forms. And especially in what may be dark or frightening days, I urge all of us to remember the words between a rabbi and a once leader of Massachusetts some 55 years ago at the height of the civil rights movement. Abraham Heschel, remember, sent a telegram to President John F. Kennedy. His advice was simple. He asked the president to recognize that the country was in a, quote, state of moral emergency, and to act with audacity. We find ourselves in a new state of moral emergency. Let us act as audaciously as the times demand. Thank you, all of you.